Hey folks, I've got a video I need to make here to discuss, a topic that was tough for me for the last couple of years in fantasy football. And joining me today is Chaos the Goat. He would also like to have a weigh in here because, he is the greatest of all time. So I want to give him a voice as well. But Taxi Squad, IR. These two concepts, I think, were really intriguing to me when I first started playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, especially, but even in the regular fantasy football world. It adds a wrinkle to the layers of levels of different difficulties in the game, but also gives you a little bit of strategy in case somebody gets hurt or, new up and coming players. But all honesty, oh, sorry, Chaos is going to reign supreme. Chaos, are you leaving? Okay. Good luck, Chaos. Chaos has another engagement. He said he would like to apologize and he will talk with us later more in detail. However, taxi squads, IR spots, they're not necessary. And this is the thing that I wanted to continue to preach here this year. Most of my leagues that I have the ability to walk away from if we don't have this change. I'm going to, not all of them, but as many as I can, because this last year especially, with the ability to change, within an hour of a game, somebody from IR to not IR and vice versa, it caused a lot of consternation on my part when I, was waiting until the bitter last second to set my rosters and went, oh, holy crap, I need to go set a bunch of rosters, and I have 15 rosters to set and 15 minutes to do it. And every time I log in, I not only have to set a roster, which, it's not my favorite part of the game, but it's part of the game and I'm going to do it. But when I have to clear out IR or drop somebody or manage that whole chunk of the game, especially in some of the complicated leagues with multiple positions, and okay, well, this guy went to IR. Oh, I have nobody to pick up behind him. And I had no idea he was going to go on IR because he's on COVID, right? Like it was not an expected thing. He tested positive on Saturday night, and we find out at Sunday morning at 11, and they put him on IR. I just feel that if you roll all these spots into a regular roster, which is what I've done in my leagues, you eliminate the need to do this, right? You don't have to have IR and taxi. You put everybody into one bucket. This 3-week IR thing that they've added will make it where the rest of the time we play fantasy football, until they change that rule, we'll have a lot of these issues, regardless of COVID. And we may have COVID for more years. We don't know that. So to me, it just makes a ton of sense to eliminate that portion of our game and just modernize our way of thinking and say, well, even if it's a Devi spot, make it part of the active roster. Why does it matter? I mean, you're not actually activating the player to start him, but he's on the active roster, so he's just one of your bench players if he's not starting. But what's the difference between taxi squad and not taxi squad? That just changed some rules where you can only have so many first-year players, blah, blah. You can do whatever you want there. You can still maintain those rules. Might be a tiny bit more difficult to police, but I'd rather have a little more agency to self-police myself, or a little more regulation upon me doing so. So if I screw up, then I might lose a player, so on. That's fine. But not having to make massive adjustments to my entire roster because people have been declared COVID IR or not COVID IR. And I had different issues on different leagues. In some cases, you start a player that you didn't realize went to COVID immediately during the game and you lose by a point. Or you've got a guy who comes back and he sits on your bench for 25 points because you didn't realize he was going to be able to play that week. Without being totally dialed in, this last year I was extremely busy, so on a week-to-week basis I just wasn't dialed in like I was in years past to those roster-making decisions. So for me, as a continued player, that's something I'd like to do and something I always like to share ideas with everybody. Man, I'd just like to see us all as a group take a look at the IR and taxi squad and go, are they necessary in my league? It's not a hard rule to change. You don't have to adjust any bylaws in any of your leagues. You just adjust how the situation is portrayed in the settings on my fantasy league, and you're good to go. And yes, like I said, it might take a little more policing. You could even say, hey, you have to declare 5-year people non-starters or whatever, however extra you want to go. That's basically what Taxi Squad and IR did for us. If you think there's too many roster spots, you probably already have too many IR spots. Just deal with it. Cut those IR spots completely and just leave them. Split them in half. Do whatever you want to do. It's fine. But having the adjustment, starting a league nowadays, I mean, IR, when I first started playing 10 years ago, it was longer than 10 years ago, but in the 10 years ago range when I was playing, you think about an IR person in the fantasy football realm, I mean, that happened very rarely. You only had, two times a team could claim somebody on IR and bring them back halfway through the season. So if you're going to put somebody on IR, they're just done. You know they're done. And it made a lot of sense for a player to go on to IR and you'd be able to replace them. Now, I mean, people are on IR for 3 weeks. Come on. How are we going to control that? I mean, it makes a ton of sense to put somebody on IR in the realm of actual professional football because then they are able to activate another player to their roster. So you'll just see it make more sense for the pros. They're going to do it more, and it makes less sense for us playing fantasy football. So I just wanted to entreat everybody, let everybody know that was my thought process, and see if I could change a few hearts there. And I went back and found Chaos. He wanted to say something. Didn't you, Chaos? No, apparently he's very shy today. But the Chaos Goat also agrees. Please, get rid of IR